Hi guys, so today I'm going to talk about the langgraph and how we can utilize the langgraph for that multi-agent frameworks. Where there are some already predefined frameworks from that Google. It's Google Agent Development Kit, or from Microsoft it's Atogen or even Crew AI. But langgraph is becoming more smarter, more adjustable, where we can do a lot of changes as per our project requirements, where we can define the complex flows as compared to the I have means the frameworks I have said. So today we will going to see like how we can utilize the langgraph for those multi-agent frameworks, and today we are going to see some basic components of those langgraph. So many of maybe you have heard like langraph it is utilized for that agentic frameworks, and so many of you also maybe thinks like it's very difficult to understand and very difficult to gauge. But once you start to learn it step by steps, and if you understand the basic components, functions, and its architectures, then definitely you will going to enjoy, and definitely within short of amount of time you can also going to create your own projects where you can orchestrate multiple agents, and based upon user input you can develop the flows, track the flows, do a lot of experiments, and you can get the final output. So before langgraph, friends, you must know like how you can utilize the lang chain, because langgraph is built upon the lang chains, and within langgraph it's like graph type of architectures where we are just connecting individual nodes, or you can consider in very simple terms like some functions. We are connecting some functions to the other functions, so that part is called as a node. And whenever we are connecting one functions or one node to the another node, so let's say if one llm or one function is giving some output, then we have need to pass that output to the next functions or next flow. So for that we are utilizing some edges. So through the edges actually we are trying to connect the output of one node or output of one functions to the input for the next one. So simple, it's like connecting the nodes or connecting the dots. So it will initially complete the one node functions. After that, once it process all its outputs, then it will going towards the next one. So within the langgraph actually we are defining all those. So for that function or that specific part is called as node. Then when we are connecting one node to the another, then it's called as edges. And friends, like whenever we are passing like some output from one node to the other node, then we also need to keep into the consideration like what is the output of that node, what was the input for that nodes, like user questions, context, or maybe other things. So we have need to carry all those things to the next node also. So for that, in the langgraph one concept is called as, it's called as a state. So within state actually we are just defining one class, and within that we are just adding this is user questions, this is output, this is the other list or dictionary or other input variables. And whenever we are passing that state to the specific node or functions, so ultimately we will just going to select specific components or specific key from that states. Then we are generating the output, then we are sending that response. So whatever response we have generated, that will be also added into the states. So while going to the next node and while going to the next functions, now through these states actually we can update those variables, or you can modify the output, or we can do the lot of changes. So you can now get to know like how langgraph is working. So it consists of mainly three parts. One is the node, second one is the edges, and third one is the state. So state is actually utilized to take the whatever inputs or whatever initially predefined components or the output from one agents to the other flow, other node or functions. Edges are defined like to control like how output of one agent is or one node is passed to the next one. Also there are some things like conditional edges. So let's say friends, means if you are building one React chatbot, and if user is asking one questions which is not related to the, where that questions don't require to pass the documents from vector store, or it's just a simple one question. So for that actually we don't need to call that React pipelines, or we don't need to require to make the searches on that specific vector stores. So that's why we can create a simple functions like whatever input is given by the users, that should be directly go to the LLM instead of doing the React search. So their conditional edges is playing the very important role, because through the conditional edges we can define if user question is related to the rack type of query, then only it will go towards that specific function, tool or node where it can do the vector search, else directly it will pass that questions to the LLM models without doing the rack search. So because of that conditional edges, we are reducing a lot of times, we are making process faster, also we are diverting the user's queries or specific functions input to the next specific node or that function. So because of that, it's improved speed, so we can add their logics. There are so many things or complex things also we can do. Also within the langraph, friends, we also need to remember one concepts like it's the memory, because whenever we are passing output of one agent to the another agent, or if there are multiple users are talking, then to keep the conversation history of that specific users, whenever that user is coming after some times or after long time, so that agent flow should remember like what previous questions were asked and what was the previous history and all those things. So for that, langraph is also coming with the check pointers memory saver, where it will going to give the thread ID for each user conversations. It will create those thread IDs, and we have need to initialize that config file, and within that config file we will pass those thread ID. So based upon those thread ID, automatically it will try to remember those conversation histories. Now there are two types of conversation histories. One is the short terms, whenever any user is coming and if user want to make the conversations only for that particular session, and once users left out, then it doesn't matter. So it's like short terms conversations where we can utilize that memory saver check pointer memory, and we will store those conversations into the memory. But let's say if there are some users are coming, if they are talking for today and after a few days they want to make the reconversations once again, so for that we can utilize some persistence databases memories, where instead of storing all those conversations to the current memory, we can utilize some PostgreSQL services or SQL services where we can store those users question answer conversations into the specific database. So langraph also has given that tools and all those accessibility, so we have just need to call them and integrate into their projects. But friends, later also we are going to face some difficulties, if user is making the conversations like 100 conversations or 200 conversations, and if we are going to store those conversations into the PostgreSQL table, then at the end, after some times, it may be going to exceed that LLM input limits. So for that we have need to apply the various concepts, like we have need to truncate that user conversation history, or we have need to keep the latest top 20-50 conversations. But sometimes it's not going to make any sense, because maybe users have asked some very important questions before 8 or 9 days, and now those are the very important. So we can create the summary of those conversations and we can store those summary. Else what we can do, whatever users means questions and answers generated by those LLM models, so we can create the embedding of those, and we can create the vector store for that user's conversation history. Now what happens if user's question is coming and it's related to the any part of that user questions, so we will just retrieve the semantic similar type data just like rack, and based upon that we will pass that context to that specific agent 3D, and based upon that we can do so many things. So that's the interesting thing of that langraph. And once if you do a simple code or simple tutorial or projects, definitely you will going to feel the interesting, and you maybe feel like it's not that much steps, whatever means rumors are going around the market. So it's very easy, just you need to learn, think and apply. And yeah, if you have any questions or doubt, please try to ask me in the comment. I'm always there for to help you. Have a good day. Bye.